कया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरोन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवम् साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशताते नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नामिने गौतुष्णे हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कान्ता राधकान्ता नमस्ते तप्त काञ्चन गौरीङ्गी राधवृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये पञ्चकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम नमोस्तुते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दाय तपत्रनित्रे येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपरिजाताय गोत्रवैत्रैकपाणिः ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतगुहे नमः। We'll start a new chapter today. Chapter 12 is the last chapter in this middle section of Bhagavad-gita. It is one of the smallest chapters, only 20 verses, and talks about devotional service. So, verse number 1. Let's look at the previous chapter. Just a quick look back. Was the universal form seen only by Arjuna? Yes, no?
No.
No.
Is worshipping universal form better than demigod worship?
No.
Yes.
Yes. Is the universal form an avatar or a vibhuti?
Vibhuti.
Vibhuti.
Vibhuti. Right. Okay. So the correlation between chapter 11 and 12. 11.55, Lord Krishna concluded with the supremacy of Bhakti Yoga or devotional service unto his personal form as Shama Sundara. Attachment to Krishna's personal form is the highest realization. Nevertheless, there are people who prefer to meditate on the impersonal Brahman. In this chapter, Arjuna inquires about the position of the personalists and the impersonalists. Okay. So, two sections are there in this chapter, or three sections. Verses 1 to 7 is section 1, verses 8 to 12 is section 2, and verses 13 to 20 is section number 3. In the first section, there is comparison of the personalism path and the impersonalism path. Then in the middle section, uh, the yoga ladder is described instead of bottom to top, top to bottom, in the other way around, right? And then in verses 13 to 20, Krishna speaks of 31 qualities and says that those who possess these qualities are very dear to him. Mhm. These are devotional qualities born of devotional service. Fine. So that's how this chapter flows. It begins with a question by Arjuna. He's asking, Arjuna Uvacha, Evam Satata Yukta Ye Bhaktastam Paripasate Ye Chapi Aksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yoga Vittamaha. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested. So here it's more of a personal question by Arjuna. Philosophically, Krishna has so many times explained that those who worship the impersonal Brahman, or those who worship the unmanifested form of Krishna, or those who think that Krishna was unmanifest before and have now manifested for some period of time, they are foolish, abudhaya, right? But Arjuna is inquiring here from Krishna because, you know, uh, it's more of a personal feeling. Like, for example, um, you are trying to please someone because you like that person, and then you are acting in a certain way, thinking that if I do this, this person will be pleased with me, or this person will appreciate what I'm doing, this person will be happy with me. You may not be able to directly ask, that do you like me, or do you really appreciate what I'm doing? So then you may indirectly ask. So here, Arjuna is a devotee of Krishna, and he worships Krishna in the personal form. Has no interest in worshipping Krishna as the universal form or in an impersonal manner, right? He loves Krishna, he is Krishna's friend, he is a devotee of Krishna. So, in order to be assured that my own position as a devotee is a safe and secure position, and Krishna is happy with me the way I am, he's asking this question, that are you more happy with those who are personalists, or are you, more happy with those who worship you as an impersonal Brahman? Fine. That's the approach here by Arjuna. So Krishna will now explain in the next verse the answer. Will go, which one is better? Who's better? Perfect. Krishna has now explained about the personal, the impersonal, and the universal, and has described all kinds of devotees and yogis. Generally, the transcendentalist can be divided into two classes. One is the impersonalist, and the other is a personalist. The personalist devotee engages himself with all energy in the service of the Supreme Lord. The impersonalist also engages himself not directly in the service of Krishna, but in meditation on the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested. We find in this chapter that of the different processes for realization of the absolute truth, Bhakti Yoga, devotional service is the highest. If one at all desires to have the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he must take to devotional service. Those who worship the Supreme Lord directly by devotional service are called personalists. Those who engage themselves in meditation on the impersonal Brahman are called impersonalists. Arjuna is here questioning which position is better. There are different ways to realize the absolute truth, but Krishna indicates in this chapter that Bhakti Yoga or devotional service to him is the highest of all. It is the most direct and it is the easiest means for association with the Godhead. In the second chapter of Bhagavad-gita, the Supreme Lord explained that a living entity is not the material body. He is the spiritual spark, and the absolute truth is the spiritual whole. In the seventh chapter, he spoke of the living entity as being part and parcel of the Supreme Whole and recommended that he transfer his attention fully to the whole. Then, again in the eighth chapter, it was said that anyone who thinks of Krishna at the time of quitting his body is at once transferred to the spiritual sky, to the abode of Krishna. And at the end of the sixth chapter, the Lord clearly said that of all yogis, one who always thinks of Krishna within himself is considered the most perfect. So, in practically every chapter, the conclusion has been that one should be attached to the personal form of Krishna, for that is the highest spiritual realization. Nevertheless, there are those who are not attached to the personal form of Krishna. They are so firmly detached that even in the preparation of commentaries to Bhagavad-gita, they want to distract other people from Krishna and transfer all devotion to the impersonal Brahmajyoti. They prefer to meditate on the impersonal form of the absolute truth, which is beyond the reach of the senses and is not manifest. And so, factually, there are two classes of transcendentalists. Now, Arjuna is trying to settle the question of which process is easier and which of the classes is most perfect. In other words, he's clarifying his own position because he is attached to the personal form of Krishna. He is not attached to the impersonal Brahman. He wants to know whether his position is secure. The impersonal manifestation, either in this material world or in the spiritual world of the Supreme Lord, is a problem for meditation. Actually, one cannot perfectly conceive of the impersonal feature of the absolute truth. Therefore, Arjuna wants to say, what is the use of such a waste of time? Arjuna experienced in the 11th chapter that to be attached to the personal form of Krishna is best because he could thus understand all other forms at the same time and there was no disturbance to his love for Krishna. This important question asked of Krishna by Arjuna will clarify the distinction between the impersonal and personal conceptions of the absolute truth. All right? Hmm? Very clear. Hmm. So let us look at something which is explained by Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan in this regard. He says there are two paths hmm, for attaining perfection in life. All right. Path one is you understand the self, Atma Tattva. Then you realize the self. And then you meditate on the source of the self, Paramatma. This approach is called from part to whole. All right. Hmm. This path was explained in chapters 2 to 6. It started with what? Sankhya Yoga. And this, Arjuna, you're not this body, you're spirit soul. Correct? Now, when you engage in Nishkam Karma Yoga, what is the first realization? When you engage in Nishkam Karma Yoga, what is the first realization? What is the result of
I'm
Nishkam Karma Yoga?
I'm not this body.
I am not this body. Very good. Yes. Nishkam Karma Yoga leads to development of Gyan, right? You forgot. Huh? I'm not this body. That knowledge will develop, no? By doing Nishkam Karma Yoga. So that will lead to realization of Atma. Now, once you know your Atma, what is the next thing? You meditate on Paramatma, the source of Atma. So that is it later on explained as Dhyana Yoga in chapter 6. So chapters 2 to 6, they explain this path. Is this path easy to follow?
No.
Why? Because Baldev Vidyabhushan Prabhu says, Atma is very small, tiny, the spirit soul. So to realize the spirit soul by the process of meditation is a very, very difficult process. Okay. Hmm. Now, the second path is this path. You understand, you have not yet realized that you are spirit soul, but you understand that the spirit soul is a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is a dependent on the Supreme Lord, and is a servant of the Supreme Lord. This is only an intellectual understanding without even realizing that I'm spirit soul. Okay. And then what you do? Now you serve the Supreme Lord, Paramatma, by the process of bhakti. This is explained in which chapters?
7 to 12.
7 to 12, right? 7 to 11 or 7 to 12. This is explained in 7 to 11 chapters. In this path, we worship the Lord with our body, mind, and senses. Of these two paths, which one is easier?
Part 2.
Second one.
Path 2. Correct? So the path 1 is the path of impersonalism. Path 2 is the path of personalism. Amongst these two paths, which one will lead to the goal faster?
Second one.
Huh? Path 2 will lead to the goal faster. Fine. Okay. This is what Arjuna wants to inquire from Krishna. All right.
But Babaji, how the second part is from whole to part? We are part to whole, no?
Because you have already started serving the Supreme Lord, no? You don't know that you are spirit soul yet. You have not
Okay.
realized. You should understand it. You start
Okay.
serving the Supreme Lord. So God realization and self-realization will come together.
Okay.
In the path 1, first comes self-realization, then comes God realization. So it is from part to whole. On path 2, we are already accepting that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You start serving Krishna. And then because of that service to Krishna, you will someday realize I am spirit soul. So from whole to path. Okay? We are on mute, Professor.
We are going, even after having understood Atma and Paramatma, we are meditating on Paramatma, Super Lord only, which is whole. So how it is whole to part? It is whole to whole then, no?
You do not understand. What is meant by from whole to part? What will come first? Realization of the Supreme Lord.
Yes.
And that realization will eventually lead to self-realization. Right? In the previous path, first of all, what did you realize? I am Atma. So you realize the part. Then that realization helps you to realize the Paramatma. So from part to whole.
Here first we realize Atma and Paramatma simultaneously, then realization of the self.
Here you don't realize Atma and Paramatma simultaneously. You just understand theoretically that you are spirit soul. Right? And you are a part and parcel of Krishna. So being a part and parcel of Krishna, your duty is to serve Krishna. This you have not yet realized I am spirit soul yet. You just understand theoretically.
Understanding and realization
It's different. Of course, realization means practical experience. Realization means practical experience.
Oh.
So here first
and Vigyan we say.
Yeah. So here you are only understanding theoretically that your spirit soul. Spirit soul is a part and parcel of Krishna and should serve Krishna. Then you practically start serving Krishna. Right? Doing bhakti. So what are you doing? First is from whole. You're serving Krishna, who is whole. And then you have started serving Krishna, then eventually in future you will also realize that I am spirit soul, practically.
Understood perfectly. Thank you.
From whole to part.
That is, we know then ultimately we realize whatever is told to us is truth, and we have experienced that.
So then it's from whole to part, because we are coming from top to bottom, not going from bottom to top.
Thank you.
Right? All right. So now Krishna will tell Arjuna. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Mayyavesh Mano Ye Mam Nityayukta Upasate Shraddhaya Pariyopetas Temi Yukta Tamamataha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. This is Krishna's opinion, that those who are personalists, they are most perfect. All right. Lalita Prishna Gopi.
Hare Krishna. In answer to Arjuna's question, Krishna clearly says that he who concentrates upon his personal form and who worships him with faith and devotion is to be considered most perfect in yoga. For one in such Krishna consciousness, there are no material activities because everything is done for Krishna. A pure devotee is consistently engaged. Sometimes he chants, sometimes he hears or reads books about Krishna, or sometimes he cooks prasadam or goes to the marketplace to purchase something for Krishna, or sometimes he washes a temple, all the dishes. Whatever he does not let a single moment pass without devoting his activities to Krishna. Such action is in full samadhi. Hare Krishna.
Next verse. Ye tu aksharam avyaktam paryupasate sarvatra gama chintyam cha kutastham achalam dhruvam sanniyam yendriya gramam sarvatra samabuddhayaha ye prapnuvanti mameva sarvabhuta hiterataha. Krishna has now started describing the path of impersonalism. Okay. Two verses are there, 3 and 4. Kindly look on this slide. Look at this slide. Verse number 3 and verse number 4. Verse number 3 talks about the object of realization. That object of realization has these 8 qualities, which I have put in different colors. Aksharam, Anirdeshyam, Avyaktam, Sarvatrakam, Achintyam, Kutastham, Achalam, and Dhruvam. These are qualities of what? These are the qualities of what?
Impersonalism.
These are the qualities of what?
Krishna.
Atma.
These are the
Brahman.
qualities of what? It's the impersonal path, and this is the object of your realization. So these are the qualities of what?
Personalist.
Brahman.
Brahman.
Brahman. These are the qualities of Brahman, impersonal Brahman. Right? Aksharam, Anirdeshyam, Avyaktam, Sarvatrakam, Achintyam, Kutastham, Achalam, Dhruvam. Understood? Right? Realizing Brahman means realizing these 8 qualities of the object of your meditation. You remember in chapter 8, when Krishna spoke about realization of Paramatma, then he gave the qualities of Paramatma. Remember or forgot? Chapter 8.
Yes.
How many qualities?
8 qualities only.
Eight.
Chapter 8, how many qualities of Paramatma? If I make a question paper now on my own way, instead of giving the questions from the question bank, I don't think anyone will pass Bhakti-sastri. I give questions from my own side, not the questions from the question bank. How many qualities of Paramatma are mentioned in chapter 8 when Krishna talk about Paramatma realization?
8.
8 Prabhuji.
9 qualities. Kabir Puranam Anushashitaram. You remember this verse? 9 qualities. And what was the process of realization he was talking about? Shat Chakra Yoga. Remember? Right? So there he mentioned about Paramatma 9 qualities. You meditate on these qualities, you realize these qualities, you will realize Paramatma. Correct? Isn't it? Similarly here, Krishna is mentioning 8 qualities. Of whom? Of Brahman. And he's saying, if you understand and realize these 8 qualities, you will realize Brahman. Understood? So this is the object of realization. Correct? And what is the process of realization? Sanniyamendriya gramam. Control all your senses. Sarvatra samabuddhayaha. And what? What is the other quality? Process. Sarvatra samabuddhayaha. You have to look everyone with equal vision. Samabuddhayaha. Treat everyone equally. That is the process. Equally disposed to everyone. Okay? So that is the process. Now, is that a difficult process? It is a very difficult process. Treating everyone equally is a very difficult process. You have to treat the friend, the enemy, the person neutral equally because they are all Brahman. You have to see Brahman everywhere, in everyone. All right, let's read the purport. Hello, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu Dandvat. Those who do not directly worship the Supreme Godhead, Krishna, but who attempts to achieve the same goal by an indirect process, also ultimately achieve the same goal. Sri Krishna. After many births, the man of wisdom seeks refuge in me, knowing that Vasudeva is all. When a person comes to full knowledge after many births, he surrenders on to Lord Krishna. If one approaches the Godhead by the method mentioned in this verse, he has to control the senses, render service to everyone, and engage in the welfare of all beings. It is inferred that one has to approach Lord Krishna, otherwise, there is no perfect realization. Often, there is much finances involved before one fully surrender onto him. In order to perceive the super soul within the individual soul, one has to cease the sensual activities of seeing, hearing, tasting, working, etc. Then one comes to understand that the supreme soul is present everywhere. Realizing this, one envies no living entities. He see no difference between man and animal because he sees soul only, not the outer covering. But for the common man, this method of impersonal realization is very difficult. Hare Krishna.
Yes. So this is a difficult process, very difficult process. There's a question for all of you. Krishna says in 12.4, such persons also at last achieve me. What does me here refer to? Thus, me here,
Brahman.
yeah, me here refers to Brahman, impersonal Brahman.
Yes.
They
And
achieve the same qualities at Lord, Madhvavan.
no,
No.
why Mad Bhavan? That Krishna said for personal worship, no? For the impersonalist, me will refer to impersonal Brahman, effulgence, or
Liberation? No.
or this me first is impersonal Brahman. Second is this me refers to Krishna's Vishwarupa form. Mhm. In case that person, worships the impersonal Brahman also and as well as meditates on Brahman. Fine. All right. And this me can also refer to Krishna himself. In case that this impersonalist later in future comes in contact with the pure devotee of Krishna. So that person, when Krishna says, at last he achieves me, it can mean impersonal Brahman effulgence, it can mean the universal form, the majestic form of Krishna, or it can also mean Krishna himself. But then Krishna himself will only be if such a person comes in contact with the pure devotee of Krishna. Right? Otherwise, that person will remain stuck in impersonal Brahman realization. Alright? Sometimes some devotees get confused. If at last they also achieve Krishna, what is the difference? Personalist also achieves Krishna, they also achieve Krishna. But they don't achieve the same aspect of Krishna. Personalist will get Krishna's nature, Mad Bhava. The impersonalist will get into Brahman effulgence, the impersonal form of Krishna. Right? And in coming in association with devotees, they may also then realize Krishna's personal form. All right?
Prabhuji, is there an example of an impersonalist after coming
Becoming
in touch with devotee, then becoming?
so many examples. Shukdev Goswami, four Kumaras,
Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya.
Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, Prakashanand Saraswati. Right? They were impersonalists. They became devotees. Fine. In fact,
But
Prakashanand
how do
because
we
Mayavadi.
know that Shukadev Goswami was an impersonalist earlier, Prabhuji?
It's given in Srimad Bhagavatam.
Prabhuji, when the impersonalist further comes into bhakti after Brahman realization, then when he achieves Krishna, it is the same thing Madhbhava as personalist achieves.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it is the
That's
same.
right. Then it will be same, no? Because then you have done bhakti. You are impersonalist. Then you give devotional service to Krishna.
Difference between the two is instead of taking the direct route, which is considered to be easy, they take the very difficult route for which they may or may not achieve Krishna.
Yes. And in the process of following that difficult route, they may also uh, lose that spiritual, aspirations. Because the path of impersonalism is the path of losing spiritual emotions. So you may then become totally corrupt, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, no? That it's better to go to hell than to have impersonal liberation.
Will there be any difference between the bhav if they went through this process and those who have directly attached to Krishna and very
No, they're
keenly
not.
they have served Krishna? No.
At the end, if you see, Prabhu, please try to understand. You were whatever in the past. If you have taken to the path of bhakti, what will be the goal achieved?
Goal will be the same, of course.
Forget about the past, no. If you have done devotional service, you did bhakti, then what? The goal will be the same, no? Right?
Okay.
Hmm.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Just a
Just had
second.
a question. These impersonalists, Prabhuji, they are also following a particular process, like the path of bhakti. It's very well defined. You're following devotional process and all is given in the Upanishads and Vedas. Is it the similar thing for these impersonalists? Why they are taking that route when they know it's such a long and lengthy process?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Prabhuji, the impersonalists, I mean, the process of devotion or bhakti yoga, what devotees are following, that's defined, well defined, how the Gita is telling us. So for these impersonalists also, is there some defined process which is already given in the Vedas that they are following that? And if they are doing that, why they are doing it? Because they know that this is a longer process and it takes more time, or they don't want to do it. I just wanted to understand that.
You see, first of all, which book they are following, do you know? Are you sure that they are following Bhagavad-gita as it is? No, right? Which commentary of Bhagavad-gita they are following, you don't know. So in the Bhaktivedanta purports in Bhagavad-gita as it is, Srila Prabhupada has very clearly explained the difficulty on the path of impersonalism. What is impersonalism? What is personalism? Right? Personalism is better than impersonalism. Are you sure that all the commentaries of Bhagavad Gita that are available in the market and all these people who are reading those commentaries, in those commentaries, such clear explanation is given? We don't know, right?
Yeah.
What if someone is writing a commentary on Bhagavad Gita and uh, manipulating the statements and then trying to convince the reader that no, the path of impersonalism is faster? Then what? So,
So Prabhuji,
your,
that means they are following that book.
so your
They are
problem
following.
is basically what you are thinking. If it is so clear, why these people are so foolish that they are taking the path of impersonalism? Isn't it?
Right, Prabhuji. So they are following the wrong books, Prabhuji, that means.
They are following the wrong books. They are having wrong understanding. They are not reading Bhaktivedanta purpose, Bhagavad Gita as it is. They are not listening to Prabhupada lectures. You are getting knowledge from this source, so for you everything is crystal clear. For them, everything is not crystal clear.
Okay.
Right?
So the Vedic literatures, Prabhuji, sorry, Prabhuji, just extending this question. The Vedic literatures or the other Upanishads and all, they also would be having some defined process for these impersonalists or to attain Lord Krishna or Brahman, one stage lesser than the ultimate supreme personality of Godhead. So those Upanishads, Prabhuji, they are not following that. They are also following distorted versions of that.
Prabhu, if there is no parampara, then where is the source of authentic knowledge? You are talking about those people. Which parampara do they belong to?
Yes, Prabhuji, I'm trying to understand that only. I mean, either they are ignorant and they are not knowing that and they are taking the longer route, but they are still reaching somewhere because they are ultimately achieving one stage lesser than Golak Dham. The
That one
effulgence.
stage lesser than Golok Dham is nothing. If you are thinking it's just one stage less, you don't know what is that one stage less. Right? The level of prema for Krishna and impersonal Brahman realization, you can't compare these two things. You can't say it is just one stage less. Right? In comparison, the amount of happiness which one gets by achieving love of Krishna is oceanic in amount. And the amount of happiness you get by impersonal liberation is like the amount of water contained in the hoof print of a cow or a calf. It is
Yes,
so
Prabhuji.
unique. So it's not one stage less,
Yes, yes.
right? It's not one stage less.
Yes, Prabhuji. I mean, because Krishna is saying ultimately they are also getting to me with the longer route. So I was wondering what they are achieving in doing that.
Okay.
So, okay, Prabhuji, I got it. Thank you.
Any other question?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, yeah. Regarding this, Prabhupada's purport mentioned 7.19, I think this is verse. After many verses, the wise can understand that Vasudeva is the source of all sources. Here, why this is quoted here related to this Brahman, that means that this many verses, long time, maybe we just take this indirect approach. So about this verse 7.19, so I just check again this verse, but I see this is Krishna mentioned about those pure devotees, it looks like, but here it looks like it refers to this wise, means that those take indirect passes to come to Krishna.
Balaji, I
So
am not able to understand your question. Please make the question a little short.
how to say? So regarding this purport, Prabhupada is quoting, I think it's 7.19 verse of Bhagavad-gita. So my question is that the wise here mentioned, or we say, what kind of person they refer to? They sorry, I don't know if I can express myself clearly about this.
Can you put in the chat box, please?
Okay, let me try. Thank you.
You write the statement from the purport which you are referring to, and then put your question in the chat box. Any other question?
Hare Krishna,
Prabhuji?
Prabhu.
Yes. Tulasi Mataji.
Prabhu, the four Kumaras, were they also impersonalists before becoming personal?
Yeah, they were Gyanis. Gyani Bhaktas. Self-realized.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes, Vaishi Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So impersonalist here refers to the Brahmavadis only, Prabhuji?
Impersonalist refers to both Mayavadis and Brahmavadis.
But in this chapter, is it
In
specifically
this
Brahma?
chapter, it refers to Brahmavadis.
Okay. Thank you. Krishna.
In this chapter, it refers to Brahmavadis. Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you.
Yes. Any other question? You have put the question in the chat box, Mataji, Lalita Vishnu. Prabhupada quoted 7.19, after many births and deaths, he was actually knowledge that surrender unto me. Yes. So, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Gyanvan Ma Prakriti Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sa Mahatmana Sudurlabhani. That person becomes Mahatma of great soul after many births, he surrenders to Krishna. Then he is called a great soul. Not that he's a great soul, he's an impersonalist, so he's a great soul. Such an impersonalist, who after many births, will surrender to Krishna. And because now he has surrendered to Krishna, that's why he has become a great soul. Okay.
So before that, may take many verses, means they may take other approaches to come into this point. So in that case, they taking indirect passes may be here mentioned, because Prabhupada quoted this quote, this text or verses in this 12.3 and 4.
He quoted this verse. Go to this verse. Go to the verse 7.19 and you read the translation of this verse. This is a problem. See, when you are trying to understand the Sanskrit just through the English without understanding the mood of the translation of the Sanskrit, you'll never understand. You are thinking because that person, you are confused, why is Prabhupada calling such a person great soul? He's not calling that person great soul because that person is an impersonalist. That person is a great soul because that person, after many, many births, has surrendered to Krishna. Right? The verse 7.19 is Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Mam Prapatyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. Right? So here Mahatma refers to what? Great soul. But why that person is a great soul? Because that person is an impersonalist? No. Bahunam Janmanam Ante, after many, many births, a jnani has come to this realization, Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Lord Krishna is everything. I should surrender to Lord Krishna. So therefore, because he has come to that realization, he is a great soul. Fine.
Okay.
But when you are writing it in English, you write a great soul. After many, many births of impersonal understanding or realization, will come to the realization that Krishna is the source of everything, or Krishna is everything, and I should surrender to Krishna. Right? But that person is not a great soul because that person is an impersonalist. That person is a great soul because though he was an impersonalist, after many, many births, he came to understand that Krishna is everything. Okay?
Okay, because sometimes in Chinese translation, we see this great soul is translated to the wise, means a gyani. Sometimes I misunderstood this is mean
So
gyani.
that is a problem. That is a very big problem that we should know. When you are expressing certain thing in a particular language and you don't know the original language, then you may sometimes miss the mood. When you are reading the Sanskrit, it's very clear. You first of all were impersonalist for many lives. After many, many lives, you came to the understanding that Krishna is everything, Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Sa Mahatma. Therefore, you became a Mahatma, right? A great soul. But when you are expressing it in another language, you may write it in this way: you are a great soul first, and then, you, after many, many births, you came to this realization that Krishna is everything. That means you're already a great, you're already a great soul.
That's it.
And
That's
then
the
later on,
point.
you came to realize that Krishna is the source of everything. So then, the chronology, the order is wrong now, right? The order is wrong now. So the reader will get confused. If this is also great soul, that is also great soul. Who is actually great soul? Right? So this is very, very important.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, now another question, another point by Paramgati Prabhu. Prabhupada mentions in a purport, an impersonalist also has a Mahatma. So it seems impersonalists are also Mahatmas. There are two types of Mahatmas, the impersonalist and the devotee. Although their goal is different, ultimate goal is different, the process of emancipation is almost the same. Both want impersonal happiness. How to reconcile? Again, Prabhu, you see why Prabhupada is mentioning a Brahmavadi as a Mahatma or a transcendentalist, because that person is aiming for a spiritual goal, right? So in that sense, that person is also referred to as a Mahatma, or in some places he'll say, here, as he said, there are two types of Mahatmas. In some places, say there are two types of transcendentalists, right? Those are impersonal or personal. So now, if you compare that person to materially conditioned person, definitely that person is a Mahatma, a great soul. Here, Mataji's question is, she's asking, she wants to ask is, if this is also Mahatma and a devotee is also Mahatma, then how are they, who is better than the other? Right? So in that regards, a devotee's position is much more superior. So when you read the translation goes like, a great soul, after many, many births, comes to realize Krishna is everything. But then in that translation, the order is wrong. It's like that person has gone through many, many births, have come to realize that Krishna is the source of everything. And then Bhagavad-gita is calling such a person as Mahatma. Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha, isn't it? So her point is different, that if both are great souls, then why one is superior, the other is inferior, isn't it? Here Prabhupada is saying there are two types of Mahatmas. In that basis, there are two types of transcendentalists, and they are great souls compared to the other so many conditioned souls who want to stay in material existence only, don't want to come out of material existence. Right? So in that way, both are Mahatmas. Hmm? All right. Fine. Next question. Hmm. Any other question? Next verse. Now, why is this path difficult? The path of impersonal liberation or impersonal realization. Krishna says, क्लेशोऽधिकतरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखम् देहवद्भिरवाप्यते. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. Why the impersonal path is difficult? Because we are having a form, though it's a material form. We have a form. We are used to engage our senses in seeing, in hearing, in touching, in tasting. And here, the path of impersonalism requires that you meditate on something which does not have a form. Right? So that becomes very difficult for an embodied living entity. For someone who has a material form, material senses, and has actively used those senses in sense perception, to meditate on something which is without form. It's a very difficult thing, right? Very difficult. Klesho dikkatarastesham. It's full of klesha. Ashok Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. The group of transcendentalists who follow the path of inconceivable, unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord are called Jnani Yogis. And persons who are in full Krishna consciousness, engaged in devotional service to the Lord, are called Bhakti Yogis. Now, here the difference between Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga is definitely expressed. The process of Jnana Yoga, although ultimately bringing one to the same goal, is very troublesome, whereas the path of Bhakti Yoga, the process of being in direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is easier and natural for the embodied soul. The individual soul is embodied since time immemorial. It is very difficult for him to simply theoretically understand that he is not the body. Therefore, the Bhakti Yogi accepts the deity of Krishna as worshipable because there is some bodily conception fixed in the mind which can thus be applied. Of course, worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his form within the temple is not idol worship. There is evidence in the Vedic literature that worship may be saguna and nirguna of the Supreme possessing or not possessing attributes. Worship of the deity in the temple is saguna worship, for the Lord is represented by material qualities. But the form of the Lord, though represented by material qualities such as stone, wood, or oil paint, is not actually material. This is the absolute nature of the Supreme Lord. A crude example may be given here. We may find some mailboxes on the street, and if we post our letters in those boxes, they will naturally go to their destination without difficulty. But any old box or an imitation which we may find somewhere, but which is not authorized by the post office, will not do the work. Similarly, God has an authorized representation in the deity form, which is called Archvigraha. This Archvigraha is an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. God will accept service through that form. The Lord is omnipotent, all-powerful. Therefore, by his incarnation and Archvigraha, he can accept the services of the devotee just to make it convenient for the man in conditional life. So, for a devotee, there is no difficulty in approaching the Supreme immediately and directly, but for those who are following the impersonal way to spiritual realization, the path is difficult. They have to understand the unmanifested representation of the Supreme through such Vedic literatures as Upanishads, and they have to learn the language, understand the non-perceptual feelings, and realize all these processes. This is not very easy for a common man. A person in Krishna consciousness engaged in devotional service simply by the guidance of a spiritual master, simply by offering regulative obeisances unto the deity, simply by hearing the glories of the Lord, and simply by eating the remnants of foodstuffs offered to the Lord, realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead very easily. There is no doubt that the impersonalists are unnecessarily taking a troublesome path with the risk of not realizing the absolute truth at the ultimate end. But the personalist, without any risk, trouble, or difficulty, approaches the Supreme Personality directly. A similar passage appears in Srimad Bhagavatam. It is stated there that if one ultimately has to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the surrendering process is called bhakti, but instead takes the trouble to understand what is Brahman and what is not Brahman and spends his whole life in that way, the result is simply troublesome. Therefore, it is advised here that one should not take up this troublesome path of self-realization because there is uncertainty in the ultimate result. A living entity is eternally an individual soul, and if he wants to merge into the spiritual whole, he may accomplish the realization of the eternal and knowledgeable aspects of this original nature, but the blissful portion is not realized. By the grace of some devotee, such a transcendentalist, highly learned in the process of Jnana Yoga, may come to the point of Bhakti Yoga or devotional service. At that time, long practice in impersonalism also becomes a source of trouble because he cannot give up the idea. Therefore, an embodied soul is always in difficulty with the unmanifest, both at the time of practice and at the time of realization. Every living soul is partially independent, and one should know for certain that this unmanifested realization is against the nature of his spiritual blissful self. One should not take up this process. For every individual living entity, the process of Krishna consciousness, which entails full engagement in devotional service, is the best way. If one wants to ignore this devotional service, there is a danger of turning to atheism. Thus, the process of centering attention on unmanifested, the inconceivable, which is beyond the approach of the senses, as already expressed in this verse, should never be encouraged at any time, especially in this age. It is not advised by Lord Krishna. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, I have two doubts. Can I?
Yes, Prabhu.
In the first para of this purport, it is said, of course, worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his form within the temple is not idol worship. But we always call it idol worship, no?
Who
It is
calls?
we call idol also.
Who calls? When you say we call, who calls? Have you ever heard Prabhupada say deity as idol?
No, he has not used the word idol anyway.
Have you heard any spiritual master in iskcon use the word idol?
No, it is in our household only that from the very beginning.
Then you say then you say in my house who will call, right? If I say we call,
Yes.
So that is our wrong approach or our wrong understanding. We call the deity as statue, we call the deity as idol, you know. But Vaishnavas, they never call the deity as idol.
We call it deity worship here in iskcon, yes.
We call it to worship. In Sanskrit, it is called Arsha Vigraha.
And what is the worship of Nirguna? Saguna, okay. God is there. He has got all the qualities.
Nirguna means impersonal Brahman.
Okay.
Nirguna, without any
That's simple.
attributes. Nirguna or Nirvishesha means the same.
Okay.
No attributes, no characteristics, no personal characteristics.
Saguna means personal. Nirguna is impersonal.
Yes.
And
Saguna means
another,
with
and
attributes.
another paragraph here says, when they do individual soul, if he wants to merge into the supreme, then he realizes eternal and knowledgeable aspects. But that bliss is missing. Is that the right interpretation? That they are not enjoying.
It's not like that. They are also experiencing happiness. But then the amount of happiness is very tiny. Lord has these three aspects, Sat, Chit, and Ananda. So in Brahman realization, the Sat feature is 100% realized. The Chit feature is somewhat realized. And the Ananda feature is also somewhat realized, not completely realized. When there is Paramatma realization, then Sat and Chit are completely realized. But Ananda is partially realized. And when there is Bhagavan realization, then Sat, Chit, Ananda are all three completely realized. So when it's mentioned that the bliss portion is missing, it doesn't mean that it's totally missing. It is present, but in very minute quantity. That's why impersonal realization is also known as Brahmananda. Brahmananda means what? The happiness of Brahman realization. So there is Ananda there, happiness is there, bliss is there, but it's very small.
Okay. This is the difference between impersonal, Paramatma, and Bhagavan realization. How much in quantity we can say they realize Sat, Chit, Anand? Is 100%, somewhat, then 100%, and somewhat.
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
What else?
Hey, Krishna Prabhu, can I ask one question?
Yes, please.
Prabhu, for devotees like us, Srila Prabhupada said when we chant Mahamantra, we can control the senses. But for the impersonal person, how can they control the senses to the extent that we can?
Question is Prabhupada's told to us devotees to chant the Mahamantra and you can control the senses. And in impersonalists, they also control the senses. So can they control the senses to the extent we can? That's the
Yes,
question.
yes,
So first of all, when you say we devotees also have different levels,
yes,
right? Similarly, impersonalists also have different levels. So when you are talking about someone who is a perfect impersonalist, who has realized impersonalism and has achieved perfection, that perfect, if you compare to a perfect devotee, then definitely a devotee's self-control is much more than the self-control of an impersonalist.
mm,
Example, Durvasa Muni, Ambarish Maharaj. Durvasa Muni is a yogi, Ambarish Maharaj is a pure devotee. So Ambarish Maharaj's self-control is much more than the self-control of Durvasa Muni, right? But if you are talking about a person who is a perfect on the path of impersonalism, and then you're talking about a devotee like you and me, and then comparing the ability to control the self, the mind and senses, then there is no comparison. Then they may be better than us in controlling the senses.
yes. But Prabhu, this impersonal person, are they all vegetarian? Like,
I don't know. Maybe may not be.
we have a system now, like,
Which impersonalist you're talking about? Are you talking about those who are genuine impersonalists, or you're talking about any your friend or your neighbor or someone working in your company? Whom are you talking about?
Those who are practicing.
Those are gen those
Like
who are
Brahman.
those who are generally practicing impersonalism.
Yes, this is possible.
So those who are generally practicing impersonalism, they will not be non-vegetarians
Okay.
because they will also live a very sattvic life.
Yes.
So if you're talking about some neighbor of yours or someone working in your company who's claiming to be an impersonalist and then eating non-veg, that's a different thing. But those are genuine impersonalists, they will live a very pure sattvic life.
Okay.
They will not eat non-veg.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhu. Okay.
Okay. Any other question? Next verse. ये तु सर्वाणि कर्माणि मयि सन्न्यस्य मत्पराः अन्यन्येनैव योगेन मां ध्यायन्त उपासते तेषामहं समुद्धर्ता मृत्युसंसारसागरात् भवामि न चिदात् पार्थ चेतसाम्. But those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So for the personalist, Krishna is saying, I am swift deliverer from the ocean of birth, which means they attain to the goal much more faster, much more quickly than the impersonalists. Tulasi Maharshi.
Hare Krishna Prabhu pranams. Purport. It is explicitly stated here that the devotees are very fortunate to be delivered very soon from material existence by the Lord. In pure devotional service, one comes to the realization that God is great and that the individual soul is subordinate to him. His duty is to render service to the Lord, and if he does not, then he will render service to Maya. As stated before, the Supreme Lord can be appreciated only by devotional service. Therefore, one should be fully devoted. One should fix his mind fully on Krishna in order to achieve him. One should work only for Krishna. It does not matter in what kind of work one engages, but that work should be done only for Krishna. That is the standard of devotional service. The devotee does not desire any achievement other than pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His life's mission is to please Krishna, and he can sacrifice everything for Krishna's satisfaction, just as Arjuna did in the battle of Kurukshetra. The process is very simple. One can devote himself in his occupation and engage at the same time in chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Such transcendental chanting attracts the devotee to the personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord herein promises that without delay, he will deliver a pure devotee thus engaged from the ocean of material existence. Those who are advanced in yoga practice can willfully transfer the soul to whatever planet they like by the yoga process, and others take the opportunity in various ways. But as far as the devotee is concerned, it is clearly stated here that the Lord himself takes him. The devotee does not need to wait to become very experienced in order to transfer himself to the spiritual sky. In the Varaha Purana, this verse appears, Nayami paramam stanam archir adi gatim vina Garuda skandam aropya yat techam anivarit taha. The purport of this verse is that a devotee does not need to practice Astanga Yoga in order to transfer his soul to the spiritual planets. The responsibility is taken by the Supreme Lord himself. He clearly states here that he himself becomes the deliverer. A child is completely cared for by his parents, and thus his position is secure. Similarly, a devotee does not need to endeavor to transfer himself to yoga practice by yoga practice to other planets. Rather, the Supreme Lord, by his great mercy, comes at once, riding on his bird carrier Garuda, and at once delivers the devotee from material existence. Although a man who has fallen in the ocean may struggle very hard and may be very expert in swimming, he cannot save himself. But if someone comes and picks him up from the water, then he is easily rescued. Similarly, the Lord picks up the devotee from this material existence. One simply has to practice the easy process of Krishna consciousness and fully engage himself in devotional service. Any intelligent man should always prefer the process of devotional service to all other paths. In the Narayana, this is confirmed as follows: Yavai sadhana sampatihi purusharti chatustaya taya vina tad apnoti naro narayana shrayaha. The purport of this verse is that one should not engage in the different processes of fruitive activity or cultivate knowledge by the mental speculative process. One who is devoted to the Supreme Personality can attain all the benefits derived from the other yogic processes, speculation, rituals, sacrifices, charities, etc. That is the specific benediction of devotional service. Simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. A devotee of the Lord can approach the supreme destination easily and happily, but this destination cannot be approached by any other process of religion. The conclusion in the Bhagavad-gita is stated in the 18th chapter: Sarva dharman parityajya man ekam saranam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayasyami ma chaha. One should give up all other processes of self-realization and simply execute devotional service in Krishna consciousness. That will enable one to reach the highest perfection of life. There is no need for one to consider the sinful actions of his past life, because the Supreme Lord fully takes charge of him. Therefore, one should not futilely try to deliver himself in spiritual realization. Let everyone take shelter of the Supreme Omnipotent Godhead, Krishna. That is the highest perfection of life. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. So if we compare the path of impersonalism and personalism, what are the points of differences?
Impersonalism is achieved by Ashtanga Yoga, and personalism is achieved by devotional service.
Any other difference?
The goal of both is different.
What else?
Impersonalism take a long time, whereas personalism is more easy.
Yes, what else?
The path of impersonalism is unsure to realize the absolute truth, while personalism, the path is absolutely assured.
Yes.
Krishna directly takes interest in the personal way, whereas not so in the impersonal way.
Yes. What else?
In fact, they would not realize the blissful portion of the Supreme Personality Godhead.
Mhm.
If the devotee
bliss
falls in
will-
the ocean, Krishna will himself come and save him.
Right. So there is form, formless, easy, troublesome. In the path of personalism, there is engagement of the senses. In the path of impersonalism, there is restriction of the senses. In the path of personalism, you chant the Mahamantra. In the impersonal path, you study the Upanishads. Mercy factor is more prominent in the path of personalism. Endeavor factor is more prominent in the path of impersonalism. Certain and uncertain. Right. So these are few differences from Prabhupada's purpose between the two paths. Mhm. So this is a very beautiful verse. Tesham, no? Krishna is saying, Tesham aham samudharta mrityu sansara sagarat bhavami na chilapanka maya ushata chekasam. Krishna personally comes to deliver his pure devotees. Personally comes. He's very eager to help. Like it's explained in the case of Gajendra Mokshan, where Gajendra was praying to the Lord for help. If you hear the pastime with the commentaries of the Acharyas, it's explained that Gajendra, he did not really call out to Krishna. He did not say the name Narayana or Krishna. He just said the Supreme Absolute, Param Satya. So when Gajendra was requesting for help, looking at his pitiable condition, many demigods felt sad for him. And they were kind of ready to fly to help Gajendra. And Gajendra called out for help, that please come and save me, the Supreme Lord. So some of the demigods were ready to go ahead and save him. But then when the demigods saw that the Supreme Lord Vishnu himself is climbing on top of Garuda, they stepped back. They said, okay, the main boss is going. We need not go. So they just stopped. They just stopped behind. He's going. So it's explained that when the Lord climbed onto Garuda, he told Garuda, move fast. Gajendra is calling us and he's going to die. And Garuda was not so fast. So the Acharyas explained, Lord Vishnu told Garuda, you stop. He came down from Garuda and then he put Garuda under his armpit. He put in his armpit. And then he flew, keeping Garuda in his armpit. And when then they reach the scene, it will be very awkward, right? Like Garuda is in Krishna's armpit or Vishnu's armpit, and Vishnu is flying. So then when they reach the scene, then Lord Vishnu said, okay, now we'll swap the position. You come below me and I'll climb on top of you, and then we'll go and protect Gajendra. So the Lord is that eager to help us to protect us to that is very, very eager. Right? He doesn't wait for the devotee to come to Vaikuntha. He comes to personally pick them up. When I was thinking of this verse, one example came to my mind. Very interesting example. Let's say if you have your son or daughter studying in some foreign land, maybe London or New York, United States, right? And then the child is saying that I've completed my graduation or my master's, I want to come back home. So as a parent, as a loving parent, what will you do at minutes? You go to the airport to receive the child. That will be the maximum thing that you're going to do, right? Okay, my dear son, my dear daughter, I'll be at the airport to pick you up. Even if the flight is landing at 1 a.m. in the morning, I'll be there at the airport to pick you up. Isn't it? But how special will the child feel if the parent says, you stay there, I'm coming to pick you up. If you are in London, I am coming to London with a special flight, and then we'll come back home together in a return flight. That will be a very special thing, isn't it? So Krishna is so eager to meet the devotee. He is saying that I'm not waiting for you at the gate of Vaikuntha. I am coming to pick you up from where you are and then take you back to Vaikuntha. That much Krishna is eager to bring that devotee back to him. You personally come to that place, pick him, and take him back. Very special. So that's the difference between the path of personalism and impersonalism. All right. We'll stop here. We'll continue in the next class with the next other verses. Any other question? Last question? Before you leave, I'll make some announcement. No questions? So that's tomorrow is Janmashtami. Wish you all a very happy Janmashtami in advance. This week, lots of festivals coming up. Janmashtami is there, Prabhupada Appearance Day is there. And then Ekadashi is coming. So next week, we'll have our last class for this unit, chapter 12. If you want, we can have the exam, shloka exam on Sunday. And if you don't want, then we can have the shloka exam after, this week, coming Sunday, next week, shloka exam and post exam. So it's your choice.
As per the timetable, we will go, Prabhuji, as you have
What is the
detailed on
timetable?
the-
Yes, as per timetable, 7th and 8th.
Who made the timetable?
You sent, Prabhuji, 2 exams on 7th and 8th September, TBA on 7th and 8th shlokas.
But the timetable can be changed, no?
So that is there, but we are giving only our choice. Timetable is always your prerogative. You can do it and we'll fall in line.
All right, fine. So 7th and 8th we'll do the exam. You have then 2 weeks to study, basically. Take your time. No problem. Okay. 7th and 8th you do the exam, and if your essays are pending, please send the essays on time. And I don't know if all of you are doing the quizzes on the different platforms wherever you are supposed to. If you are supposed to do on the website, if you're doing it on the website, if you're supposed to do it on Google Form, we're doing it on the Google Form, then kindly do the quizzes. And one more thing, actually, our mobile app developer was telling us that, the mobile app is ready. I'm just supposed to do a final review of it. We are planning to launch it tomorrow, but I think we'll not be able to launch it tomorrow. But maybe 1 week more, we will be ready to launch it. So the developer was telling that if you can kindly go to Play Store, Google Play Store, and just leave a review for the mobile app, then what will happen is whatever messages we send to the Google Play Store for verification and authentication, if the app has received some feedback and reviews, they will consider those requests more fast. Understanding? So our job will get done faster. If it's going to take 5 days, if the app has some reviews and feedback, it will take 2 days. So you just have to go to the app page on the Play Store, Google Play Store, and leave a review. Okay. Or a feedback. Or even, let's say you don't want to leave a review, maybe just a question or a comment or anything, or some, this app, this particular issue is there, whatever. So they want some kind of interaction, and then they will start accepting our requests much more fast. It's not an easy process. We have to apply for different country validations. So it's not that if I put the app on the Play Store, it will be available in all the countries. First, it will be available in first 5 countries, then next 5 countries, then next 5 countries. And it takes time. So if you help us in this way, put a feedback, put a review, ask a question, or give a rating, then everything will work faster.
By which name we get the app on the Play Store?
Simple Vedas.
Simple Vedas.
All right.
Prabhu, is that one word or two separate words?
It's one word.
Simple Vedas.
Simple
Vedas.
Vedas. No space in between.
Okay, thank you.
And if you're outside India, yeah, it may not work in all the countries. In India, of course, it will work. It is also available on the App Store. Yes. Outside India, it's only available in 5 countries now: India, Mauritius, UAE, Bahrain, and one more country. Then we'll apply for next 5, the next 5, next 5, like that will apply. Okay. So please do that small favor so that the thing can move fast. Right. Thank you. Hare Krishna.